Hello guys, Sister Florcel here. So today we're going to talk about the first apostolic exhortation of our Holy Father Pope Francis, the Evangelii Gaudium. This apostolic exhortation of our Holy Father Pope Francis was written in response to the Synod of Bishops on the new evangelization. In his apostolic exhortation, our Holy Father Pope Francis has publicly laid down what he wants to focus on during his pontificate. He challenges all Catholics to share the message of the gospel with joy and mercy, and a church less interested in ourselves and our own interest, and more interested in the world outside the church, especially the poorest and the most vulnerable who are so much part of that world. It summons to what the Holy Father calls a missionary conversion which cannot leave things as they are. He goes on, I prefer a church which is bruised, hurting and dirty, because it has been out on the streets, rather than a church which is unhealthy from being confined and for its own security.
The key points of the document titled The Joy of the Gospel, which the Pope says must have, quote, important consequences. The Pope isn't concerned about changing church doctrine, but rather in changing the way Christianity is presented to the world. He says talking about God isn't about imposing beliefs, but rather about sharing the joy of faith. The humanity of the Catholic Church is one of the points he highlights, including showing mercy to the sinner. He also calls for seeking the happiness of others, quote, just as their Heavenly Father does. He invites Catholics to evangelize on an individual and personal basis. In his writings, the Pope calls on Christians to not turn a blind eye before social injustice. He specifically calls out the economy of exclusion and inequality, the tyranny of markets, and the culture of idolizing money. He also addresses modern-day slavery like forced prostitution and child labor, including begging. The priestly ordination of women is not an option, but the Pope writes that women should be given more concrete roles in the Church. He also adds that being a priest is a role of service and not of dignity or holiness. When it comes to defending life, the Pope says the Church will not change its stance on abortion, explaining that eliminating life is, quote, not progressive. But he also questions whether the Church has done enough to help single pregnant women. The document is for all Catholics and not just church superiors. The Pope also said that Jesus Christ breaks through the, quote, boring categories we often try to limit him to. It's a document where the Pope urges Catholics to show the joy of faith, but with faith, he says, comes the responsibility of sharing it.
markets. The priestly ordination of women is not an option, but the Pope writes that women should be roles in the church. He also adds that being a priest is the role of service and not of dignity or holiness. When it comes to defending life, the Pope says, the Church will not change its stance on abortion, explaining that eliminating life is not progressive, but he also questioned whether the Church has done enough to help single pregnant. He says that the document is for all Catholics and not just church superiors. The Pope also said that Jesus